We'll have the full story. Good evening, everyone. I'm Robin Swoboda.
And I'm Tim Taylor. This is News Center 8 for Monday, January 30th, 1995.
Live from Cleveland's own News Center 8, Dick Goddard with weather, Casey Coleman on sports, Robin Swoboda, Tim Taylor, and Northeast Ohio's largest news team. This is News Center 8 at 6.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Here's what's happening. How safe are the power lines in your backyard? Well, experts for the Cleveland Electric Illuminating Company say they have now identified more than 1,000 safety violations stemming from Cleveland Public Power's expansion of its system.
Safety experts for CEI say many Cleveland Public Power lines were installed too close to their own and pose a real danger to workers for both utilities and the general public.
The I-Team's Carl Monday is the first to learn of a massive amount of violations. Carl, is this just more of the same old power struggle between the two utilities, or is there genuine cause for concern?
Well, Tim and Robin, the judge hearing the dispute ordered a safety expert to investigate allegations that contractors for Cleveland Public Power did a sloppy job of installing its new lines. The expert was also called in to help mediate the dispute. What did he find? Well, we can't say for sure. Judge Carl Character has placed a gag order on the mediator's findings. But sources tell us the mediator has documented a mountain of safety violations as CPP expands its service to the neighborhoods.
Here we're looking at a CEI pole with an illegal attachment of a CPP crossarm. And
Greg Johnson is an engineering technician for CEI. He's been busy looking for dangerous and illegal hookups by Cleveland Public Power installers. According to documents obtained by the I-Team, CEI has identified over 1,000 violations it says could cause injury or death.
A wire could fall on this garage. It could also fall on the back there. You have a cyclone fence and become energized. Anytime the public is in this general area, it's a hazardous situation.
Concern over the safety violations first surfaced last year after CEI brought suit against CPP. But at that time, no one was expecting so many violations or that it would take so long to correct them.
We're in situations where employees are exposed to danger. This is particularly true in the winter season when you have snow and ice loading on the lines. They tend to sag more. If we had a severe winter storm go through the area, there would probably be dozens of situations where CPP lines would come into contact with our lines.
And that could energize the power lines. It happened last year, causing $100,000 damage to a substation and destroying appliances like those belonging to Gloria Mills.
My microwave blew out. I lost 2 portable color TVs.
The CEI lines pump out 4,000 volts of power. The CPP lines, 13,000 volts. Their concern is over more than just someone's microwave or TV set.
We all remember too well about the RTA bus shelters, which were, leaving live wires exposed, and someone was killed on one of them. And that is not out of the question of this happening to a resident of the city of Cleveland who happens to lean up against a telephone pole or, going into their own house. They could possibly be in peril.
You can see we're in a parking lot here. Suppose one of these wires comes down on top of one of these vehicles. Someone's in one of the vehicles. It would be a sad situation to see one of these employees that work here in this parking lot and they come out and one of these wires are down on their vehicle, or they happen to pick one up or touch one accidentally.
Well, no one for the city was willing to talk to us today, including the utilities director. Just before news time, Judge Character called both sides of the dispute to a hearing to discuss our story. The judge also called TV8 asking us to hold off on our story, saying it would, quote, unduly alarm the public. And just a few minutes ago, an informed source at the courthouse told us that the person appointed by the court to study this, the mediator, feels that there is no, quote, immediate danger to the public with this issue of power lines. So that just in.
All right, Carl. Well, who is responsible for correcting these if, in fact, they do become a danger to the public, and how much will it cost to fix it all?
Well, it looks like it'll be up to the mediator to decide who will pick up the tab for all this. But sources tell us correcting the problem could cost in the millions of dollars. So a lot could happen between now and then.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Carl. Dogs and cats. Good evening, everyone. I'm Robin Swoboda.
I'm Tim Taylor. This is News Center 8 for Wednesday, February 1st, 1995.
Live from Cleveland's own News Center 8, Dick Goddard with weather, Casey Coleman on sports, Robin Swoboda, Tim Taylor, and Northeast Ohio's largest news team. This is News Center 8 at 6.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Here's what's happening. A despondent East Side man demanding to talk to our I-Team reporter Carl Monday fired several shotgun blasts at a postal worker and then later at the SWAT unit during a 2-hour standoff with police.
Now, fortunately, no one, not the postal worker, the police, or the suspect, was seriously injured in the incident. Carl Monday has returned from the standoff on Greenvale Avenue. Carl, apparently you know the suspect personally. Who is he and what prompted him to take shots at a postal carrier and police?
Well, Tim and Rob and I have known Albert Hill for several years now. In fact, I met with Hill about a week and a half ago about some problems he was having with the security guard company that he owns. Hill told me he would get a hold of me when his troubles came to a head. Today, Hill is in a lot more trouble than even he could have imagined.
About 10 days ago, Hill and I met at his DNA detective agency that he operates out of this building on Payne Avenue. Hill was distraught over the loss of his company's security contract at Gateway and what he said was the embezzlement of hundreds of thousands of dollars from his company by a co-worker. Today, Hill tried calling me through a friend.
Yes, Carl Monday. This is Ken Thurman, a friend of Captain Albert Hill. He had told me to get in touch with you. I don't know what's going on, but he wanted to know, could you come have the news or somebody come out to his home because he can't get out, or I don't know what's going on over there, but it's something he must want you to see.
Before I had a chance to call Hill back, he talked to a postal carrier, Tracy Twiggs, who happened to be delivering a package to his home.
He was, as a matter of fact, calling for you, calling for Carl Monday, and the postal worker did not know what he was talking about.
Hill handed the carrier a written message and asked her to contact me.
There was a discussion about a piece of paper that the letter carrier tried to take from the individual. She mentioned that there was no number for you on it, and after that there was some discussion. The person made a few comments about shooting people.
And the male occupant of the house started screaming at the male person, and she turned around, dropped the package, and went back to the truck. He went in the house, came back out with a shotgun, started shooting the mail truck.
At least one shot struck the vehicle, but the carrier was not hit. 2 police cars called to check out the shooting were also shot at. The SWAT unit was called in. Unable to make contact with Hill by phone, they surrounded the house. Police say Hill fired several shots, shooting out windows and striking a SWAT member in the hand. Shortly after 3 o'clock, Hill realized he was outmanned and outarmed and gave up.
The SWAT officers brought their large armored van in, and I guess when he saw the armored van, then he came out with his hands raised and gave up to the SWAT officers then.
Albert Hill would often call me to tip me off on some sort of injustice going on in the community. But today, apparently, Hill's own problems were too much to bear. Fortunately, Hill and everybody else involved in today's incident escaped without serious injury. Tim and Robin?
Thanks, Carl. We'll see you a bit later in the news when you fill us in on that court battle you won tonight.
Well, Tim, we did fight for the right to tell you about safety violations a local power company is being blamed for. We'll have more on that in just a couple of minutes.
All right. Thank you, Carl.
On when the county will go to court.
All right, thank you, Mike. Well, you heard when our newscast started tonight about the dramatic day the I-Team's Carl Monday had when a despondent man demanding to talk to him opened fire on a postal worker. What you didn't know was before that, Carl had to fight in court for the right to bring you this next story. That's right. News Center 8's attorneys filed an appeal today because Carl was barred by court order from following up on a story we first told you about Monday. Judge Carl Character had ordered us not to carry any more stories on 1,000 safety violations, which a lawsuit blames Cleveland Public Power for causing. Judge Character is handling the suit between CPP and its competitor, Cleveland Electric Illuminating. He did not want details spelled out on the news. Well, believing the court order against TV8 violated your constitutional right to know, News Center 8 appealed and won late this afternoon.
So here is the story Carl tried to bring you last night. It concerns more than 1,000 safety code violations. That's what inspectors have found in a safety check of Cleveland Public Power's expansion lines.
But don't expect to hear much more about the safety violations, at least not from the parties involved, Cleveland Public Power and CEI. You can only hear about it from the I-Team's Carl Monday, and he's here to tell us why. Carl.
Well, as you both know, the two utilities have been at war for some time now, and the latest skirmish has spilled over into the courts. But after viewing our report Monday night, the judge in the latest CEI public power dispute has in effect put a gag order on both parties. While the issue here involves public safety, Judge Carl Character won't let the two sides respond to the serious allegations of a potential safety problem in our own backyard. Judge Carl Character has issued a media blackout on the CEI-CPP safety dispute. In a meeting with attorneys for both sides and TV8, the judge ordered the utilities not to discuss the case with the media. As we reported yesterday, a team of inspectors have found a trail of electrical hazards, more than 1,000 safety violations, on poles that are part of Cleveland Power's expansion. CEI says CPP contractors laid miles of wire, some of it exposed or too close to CEI's wires, putting the public and their workers in peril.
Anytime our workers are up there for any other reason, such as maintenance, to work on this pole, they have a ground, which is a potential, a guy could touch that and be killed.
The city says CEI is blowing smoke, that it's correcting the violations, and that CEI's claims of safety hazards are overblown.
I'd say that they have grossly exaggerated the extent of the seriousness of the situation to their competitive advantage.
An exaggeration? An I-Team review of court records found that one CEI worker has already been injured by a faulty CPP connection. James Docking, an illuminating company lineman working out of the Miles Service Center, says he was on top of a pole previously serviced by Public Power. Docking says a dangling CPP wire touched CEI's wire, creating a flash explosion, causing burns to his face, mouth, nose, neck, arms, and chest. Docking was treated for injuries at Suburban Health Center. His doctor told him he'd be blind today, if not for his safety glasses. The Occupational Health and Safety Administration wasn't aware of the violations, but OSHA's director told us today if it affects workers' safety and health, they'd be happy to look into it, and they'll deal with it appropriately. Now, several times we tried calling Alan Clapp, the expert at his hotel. He's the expert called into this case, but he didn't return our calls. But that didn't surprise us. With a gag order in effect, nobody seems to be talking these days about this issue. But and that includes the judge, Judge Character, who issued the original order. But here at TVA, we will continue to try to bring you this story.
All right. You're a busy man, Carl. It's true, and we're going to tell you why. Good evening, everyone. I'm Robin Swoboda.
I'm Tim Taylor. This is News Center 8 for Thursday, February 2nd, 1995.
Live from Cleveland's own News Center 8, Dick Goddard with weather, Casey Coleman on sports, Robin Swoboda, Tim Taylor, and Northeast Ohio's largest news team. This is News Center 8 at 6.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us.
Here's what's happening.
That this system is a sound system, it serves our customers, and no one is in danger.
Ignoring a court gag order, Mayor White called a City Hall news conference to counter charges uncovered by our I-Team that Muni Light is unsafe. And in the wake of the I-Team reports, the mayor has fired the man in charge of Cleveland Public Power.
The mayor says he went public despite the court order to put the public's mind at ease and blunt growing charges by competitor CEI that the system is riddled with safety problems.
The safety question surfaced this week in a series by Carl Monday. Carl, apparently the sparks continue to fly in the search for new customers for those utilities.
That's for sure, Tim and Robin. Well, the mayor chose his words very carefully today, but he left no doubt that Cleveland Public Power won't be a punching bag for CEI or the media. But while the mayor defends the city's electric company, he pulled the plug on the man in charge, the commissioner of Cleveland Public Power. George Pofolk is out as the city's commissioner of public power. Naga Ramadan, until now a CPP division manager, is in.
As of yesterday afternoon, I received and accepted the resignation of former Commissioner George Pofolk.
White conceded he asked for Pofolk's resignation, citing what he called a lack of leadership and management skills. It was under Pofolk's watch that the city embarked on a major expansion of its system. But as we reported, court documents show contractors hired by the city left behind a litany of safety violations, including exposed wires and wires too close to CEIs. The mayor hedged when I asked him if Pofolk's ouster was linked to the safety violations.
Is his stepping down due in part by some of the findings in the Clapp report and some of the deficiencies that you yourself admit
I asked
exist?
for his resignation.
Because of some of the
I
deficiencies?
asked for his resignation, sir.
Pofolk will remain on the CPP payroll in another capacity. Yesterday, Judge Carl Character threatened to arrest me and other TV8 personnel if we continue to air stories on the CEI-CPP dispute, now before his court, even after TV8 won a court order overriding Character's ruling. Well, today, the mayor said he respectfully ignored the court's gag ruling to set the record straight.
We recognize and we accept that there are deficiencies. We reject totally and completely the reports by Channel 8, their veracity, their facts, and the statements in terms of the real danger being posed.
The mayor accused CEI of striking fear in the minds of CPP customers.
The attempt to exploit several hundred moderate and minor problems and deficiencies with our hookups is not designed to protect the public, but designed to create fear within the public. Fear with our customers, fear with those people who are waiting to be turned on, and fear among those people who are holding more than $400 million in bonds with the name Cleveland Public Power on them.
Now, the mayor says the city has hooked up nearly 20,000 residential and business customers, and no one has been electrocuted as of yet. CEI says it will honor the court-imposed gag order and has declined to comment on the mayor's news conference.
All right, Carl, now you were able to bring us today's update because the judge so far hasn't carried out his threat to arrest you.
Well, as you know, we went to court yesterday, our attorneys went to court yesterday and got a temporary restraining order which allowed us to put these stories on the air. And today our attorney went to court again to the appeals court to make sure that doesn't happen.
All right.
So we'll see what happens in court.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Right. Hopefully.
All right, Carl. Thank you. Well, thank you, Dick. Well, News Center 8 went to court today to fight for your right to know about Cleveland Public Power's potentially dangerous expansion.
And we won. A local judge cannot stop News Center 8 from reporting on hundreds of CPP safety violations. Martin Savage is here now to tell us why this court decision is so very important.
Well, it is important because a gag order like the one the judge imposed on News Center 8 this week could keep news stories off the air. And News Center 8's lawyer said that order violated the Constitution and interfered with the public's right to know.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, this session of the Honorable...
It took a trip to appeals court to keep the story alive, but a three-judge panel has ruled TV8 can report on the case of Cleveland Public Power.
Here we're looking at a CEI pole with an illegal attachment of a CPP crossarm and...
Greg Johnson is an engineering technician for CEI.
Early this week, the I-Team's Carl Monday started detailing safety violations Cleveland Public Power is blamed for causing on CEI's power lines. The violations are documented in a lawsuit CEI filed against CPP. Common Pleas Judge Carl Character is handling the suit. He issued a gag order against News Center 8, saying our stories on the violations would unduly alarm the public.
And I believe that the viewers can make up their own minds. I think they should be the judge whether or not they're going to be afraid of what we have to report, and not the men that we elect in those black robes down at the courthouse.
Which brings us to court. News Center 8 won a written, temporary right to do the story Wednesday. Today, our attorneys won a permanent decision in our favor.
What Judge Character was trying to do was manage the news, and the government isn't well suited to manage the news.
Carl Monday says he will continue to follow the case of the utility company safety violations and whatever is done about them. But as it stands now, he won't be able to include CEI or Cleveland Public Power's response. Both sides remain under a gag order. Judge Character feels strongly that publicity will hurt their chances for a fair trial.
And earlier this week, Judge Character actually threatened to arrest Carl if he continued to report on this.
That's exactly right. He notified the attorneys for TV8 that that is what he intended to do. The deputies, though, never did show up.
All right. Thank you, Marty. All right. Thank you, Lori. A local doctor went to court this afternoon to try to prevent TV8 from airing the following I-Team investigation. An attorney for this man, Dr. Charles Dunafer, attempted to obtain a restraining order to block the airing of tonight's report. Well, late this afternoon, a judge denied the request. An I-Team probe discovered that 3 of Dr. Charles Dunafer's patients have turned up dead in recent months from an accidental drug overdose after receiving prescriptions from that doctor.
Carl Monday and the I-Team found that Dunafer has a penchant for prescribing inappropriate and excessive treatment and ignored the advice of another doctor that in some cases his treatment may be doing more harm than good.
Well, Tim and Robin, this is really the story of Joseph Malinak, William Crawford, and David Haney. They're not here to personally tell you about their experiences. They're all dead from a fatal overdose that included prescription drugs. As far as we can tell, Malinak, Crawford, and Haney didn't know each other, but they had one thing in common. They were all patients of Dr. Charles Dunafer.
I remember everything. I love him to death. I mean, he was my first boyfriend, my first I love you, my first everything. He was my whole life.
Debbie and Joe Malinak were committed to spending their lives together. A tragic series of events pulled them apart forever. In 1987, Joe was hit by a drunk driver. The accident didn't kill him, but the drugs he came to rely on to kill the pain eventually did.
6 years after the accident, Malinak was working as a safety inspector on an asbestos job here at the old Coyd Road plant. A scaffold fell, sending Malinak crashing to the ground, resulting in a painful back injury and more medication to ease the pain.
Malinak filed a workers' comp claim and was referred to Dr. Charles Dunafer, who, along with his partner, operates this industrial clinic at East 30th near Superior. Malinak had already grown addicted to painkillers from the old auto accident, but that didn't stop Dr. Dunafer from prescribing 3 potentially addictive drugs: diazepam, propoxyphene, and carisoprodol. The physician's desk reference says propoxyphene, commonly sold as Darvon or Darvocet, can cause death in patients with previous histories of misuse of tranquilizer and sedative drugs. Debbie began seeing a change in her husband. He refused to eat. All he would do is sleep.
And I called this doctor a million times. I would call him from payphones. I would go see him myself. I go, you better knock this off. I go, you're going to end up killing the guy.
90 days into his treatment, workers' comp ordered that Malinak be re-examined and that Dr. Dunafer's treatment be reviewed. Dr. Daniel Dorfman of Metro Health Center's Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation performed the examination. Citing patient confidentiality, Dr. Dorfman wouldn't talk specifically about the Malinak case, but hospital records obtained by the I-Team show Dorfman did not feel that Dunafer's treatment of Malinak was appropriate. Dorfman concluded that Malinak had been over-medicated with narcotics and muscle relaxants on a long-term basis. He recommended that Malinak be weaned off his medication and replaced with a pain management program and rehabilitation. Workers' Comp sent Dr. Dorfman's report to Dr. Dunafer. He never replied. Dr. Dorfman tried calling Dr. Dunafer. He never called back.
Well, it's frustrating. I mean, you're making recommendations that you think would help an individual. You would like to see them being followed.
Instead, Dunafer continued to prescribe narcotic drugs to Malinak. He even added others like Xanax. Experts say physical dependence on Xanax could be life-threatening. The physician's desk reference says Placido, a potent sleeping pill, shouldn't be taken for more than a week at a time. that it may result in psychological and physical dependence.
I'm with a patient right now.
Dr. Dunifer prescribed Placidil for Malinak for 3 months. In fact, in little more than a year, Dunifer wrote out 185 prescriptions for 3,140 narcotic pills to Joseph Malinak, a man already addicted to prescription drugs, a man other doctors said should be taken off drugs.
It appears that this patient has been prescribed 5 different sedating drugs, and prescribed in a way that doesn't fit within the typical practice that I'm aware of.
University Hospital's Dr. Ted Perrin teaches other doctors how to properly prescribe medicine to their patients. We asked Dr. Perrin to review Joseph Malinak's prescription history. We did not tell him who did the prescribing.
It would be highly unusual to ever have a patient in a 5-year period of time who was on all of these medications at once.
And this patient was?
And this patient was.
Even more unusual, says Dr. Perrin, is the combination of narcotics he says could make for a deadly mix. Dr. Perrin says even a patient with acute back pain should have received a muscle relaxant and a pain reliever for only
a few days to a few weeks.
Joseph Malinak was on a smorgasbord of sedatives and painkillers for over a year.
Like a fast food chain, like going in through a drive-through McDonald's or Burger King, you know, put in your order and that's it, and get it out. It's disgusting.
We also showed Malinak's prescription history to Sheriff's Narcotics Detective Dale Smith.
There's no question that there's a tremendous number of drugs given in a short period of time here.
And to Rick Coleman, who heads the Cleveland office of the DEA.
This appears to be certainly excessive.
While Joe Malinak fought the demons of prescription drug addiction, Dr. Dunifer kept piling on the prescriptions, and Malinak kept overdosing.
I would come home and Joe would be on the floor, you know, and I would call 911 and EMS. They were at our house so much they knew me by my first name.
One of those times, Joe was rushed to Deaconess Hospital after trying to pump Placidil into his arm with a needle. At the hospital, a priest administered his last rites, but Malinak pulled through. The following day, April 9th of '94, doctors at Deaconess released Malinak, but not before warning him that his next overdose could be his last. 2 days later, on April 11th, Malinak headed back to Dr. Dunifer, who prescribed a narcotic cocktail of flurazepam, carisoprodol, aprazolam, and Darvocet. Malinak continued to frequent the clinic on a weekly basis. During a 4-day period in May, Malinak received 8 prescriptions from Dunifer for 112 different narcotic pills. Last November 16th, Euclid police found prescriptions written by Dr. Dunifer in this condominium, along with the body of William Crawford.
We went to see Dr. Dunifer on the 18th to make sure that these prescriptions were valid prescriptions. And he looked at them and he said yes, he had in fact seen the deceased, I believe it was the day before, on the 15th of November, and that the deceased and his roommate appeared at his office there, and he wrote prescriptions for both of them.
I'd say, "What are you on?" "Nothing, Mom. I'm just taking the pills the doctor gave me."
Erling Crawford went to Zeeley's funeral home to make arrangements for her 43-year-old son. She thought her son would be making burial arrangements for her. Over a 10-day period prior to his death, Crawford saw Dr. Dunifer 4 times. Dr. Dunifer? The prescription drugs found by the coroner in Crawford's system were the same drugs prescribed by Dr. Dunifer.
I would like to take a handful of pills, get in the room with that dirty jerk, and shove those down his throat, clamp his mouth shut, and watch him squirm. I would just love to see that happen, and I would love to do it.
Not long ago, Euclid police raided a room at the Charter House Motel. When they gained entry,
we actually caught the individual with a needle in his arm and a weapon in the room. There were numerous pills scattered about the vanity, and we asked him where he had gotten those pills. They were Somas, Valiums, and he said that they were all valid prescriptions, that he could prove it, that he was a patient of Dr. Dunifer's.
At least he lived to tell about it. An I-team review of coroner records found still another of Dunifer's patients died in recent months from a drug overdose. David Haney died in this West Side home last month. Police found a cache of empty pill containers from Dr. Dunifer. David Haney, William Crawford, and Joseph Malinak, 3 men in their 30s and 40s, all patients of Dr. Dunifer's, all dead from a drug overdose in just a 4-month period. What kind of doctor you think you are?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a good doctor.
I'd love to see him in prison and his license taken away. I mean, he killed. My husband is gone forever.
On September 10th, one day after Joseph Malinak visited Dr. Dunifer for the last time, wife Debbie found his drug-filled body stretched across the floor. The coroner found a medicine chest full of narcotic drugs in his system, including the 3 prescriptions he filled the day before from Dr. Dunifer.
He had a positive outlook on the future. We were going to buy a house and have kids and the whole thing. And it was all taken away, and my life was turned upside down because some doctor just writes prescriptions like it's candy.
So what does Dr. Dunifer have to say about all this? We'll hear from him tomorrow and tell you why several state agencies are now investigating his practice. That comes up tomorrow night at 6 on Prescription for Disaster.
Boy, right. Incredible. Wow. Thank you, Carl. A local doctor exposed by our I-Team is now the target of separate investigations by 2 state agencies. Both the Ohio Medical Board and the Bureau of Workers' Compensation are probing the medical practice of Dr. Charles Dunifer.
And last night, the I-Team's Carl Monday reported that 3 of Dunifer's patients died from accidental overdoses in just 4 months' time. Carl, you talked to the doctor. What does he have to say about all this?
Well, Tim and Robin, as you might expect, Dr. Dunifer defends his medical practice. He says treatment of the patients who later died of an overdose was proper and within the accepted standards of medical care. Others charge it was a prescription for disaster. What kind of doctor you think you are?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a good doctor. I mean, I try to abate people's pain. I don't give them too much.
But it was apparently too much for Joseph Malinak. As we reported yesterday, Dr. Charles Dunifer prescribed more than 3,000 narcotic pills to Malinak in a little over a year, a witch's brew of painkillers, sleeping pills, and muscle relaxers. Dunifer ignored a recommendation by other doctors that Malinak be weaned from the medication.
Okay, we'll see you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Joseph Malinak didn't live to see the Christmas of '94. He died from a prescription drug overdose.
I tried to tell him to go to another doctor. He just comes here.
So you kept giving him drugs, huh?
Well, I tried to cut it down little by little.
But an I-Team review of the prescriptions written by Dunifer for Malinak showed no reduction of dosage or amount. For example, Malinak was given a narcotic sleeping pill called Placidil beginning in June of last year, 750 milligrams, up to 7 tablets a week, each week until his death. This despite a warning and the physician's desk reference that prolonged use of Placidil may result in psychological and physical dependence. In other words, addiction.
You gave him over 3,000 pills in about a year's time. I mean, here's a guy who had overdosed several times before, and you continue to give him drugs. I mean, how in good conscience could a professional doctor continue to do that?
As I said, I was under the duress of his wife or girlfriend, that he would kill her and kill himself.
I did not encourage anything. Joe was my whole life. You know, he's twisting it because he's trapped, and his lies make me sick, and they need to be stopped.
And if Dunifer really thought Malinak was suicidal, he should have done his homework on Placidil. Again, the physician's desk reference says Placidil should not be prescribed to anyone with suicidal tendencies.
Well, don't you feel there comes a point where you're doing more harm than good to some of these patients?
It never occurred to me.
Never?
It never did.
You can bet it occurred to Earlene Crawford. Her son William saw Dunifer 4 times within a 2-week period in November of last year, including the day before he overdosed and died.
I would like to take a handful of pills, get in the room with that dirty jerk, and shove those down his throat, clamp his mouth shut, and watch him squirm.
Dunifer wrote Crawford prescriptions for Valium, Tylenol with codeine, and Soma, all drugs found in Crawford's system by the coroner. Although the coroner ruled that Crawford and Malinak died from an accidental overdose, Dr. Dunifer says they'd be dead with or without the drugs.
That's not the drug that killed them. It's probably the depression and some other complicated things in their minds.
But it was apparently drugs that killed David Haney. He was a Dunifer patient for months, that is until January 12th of this year. The landlord at his apartment building hadn't heard from Haney in over a week. When he opened his apartment door, he found Haney's body on the bathroom floor, dead from an apparent accidental overdose.
That's just over there cracking. I could see somebody laying there, and I just knew it was a no-no, you know, under the circumstances.
The coroner has ruled Haney's death an accidental drug overdose. Files found in his apartment show he visited Dunifer within 2 weeks of his death. In law enforcement, prescription drug investigations take a backseat to high-profile crack cocaine, heroin, and marijuana cases, even though abuse of tranquilizers, painkillers, and antidepressants is second only to marijuana. Only a handful of detectives and agents are assigned to prescription drug abuse. In fact, the Ohio Pharmacy Board told the I-Team that 98 drug trafficking and 140 drug theft cases were dropped the last 2 years due to a lack of manpower. They said you passed out drugs like candy over here, though.
Whoa, there's no candy.
But even hundreds of man-hours by the DEA and sheriff's detectives couldn't put Demetrius Paulushin away. The Seven Hills doctor was charged with 76 counts of trafficking in prescription drugs and writing false prescriptions.
This widespread distribution of prescriptions there at the place were just totally out of control. We had people waiting in the waiting room that were discussing what they were going to get, and if you're able to get this, I'll trade it with you, and I know somebody that's willing to buy this.
But Paulushin beat the rap and went on to write 6,000 more prescriptions over the next 6 months. He finally retired after the DEA went to court and pulled his pharmaceutical license.
I'm a little concerned that it sends a message that if you're a doctor, it's okay to go ahead and prescribe, that there's no boundaries.
Apparently, the State Bureau of Workers' Compensation felt Dr. Charles Dunifer was out of bounds in 1993 alone. Dunifer billed workers' comp for over $1 million in treatment. The Bureau rejected more than half of the bills, calling the treatment inappropriate and excessive. Debbie Malinak had her own way of dealing with Dr. Dunifer.
I picked Dunifer up by his suit jacket and his tie. I picked him up, I slammed him against the wall into his desk. I go, if you ever write any prescriptions for my husband again, I go, you're gonna wish you were never born.
Well, I'm a good doctor. I mean, I try to abate people's pain. I don't give them too much, just enough to carry them up in a week's time.
Just enough to kill them?
No, not enough to kill them.
Now, we're told that Placidil, one of the drugs Dunifer gave to Joe Malinak, is rarely prescribed anymore by most physicians because of its potentially dangerous side effects. In fact, we even tried to find Placidil to take a picture of it, and we had trouble finding it at a pharmacy in town. Nobody carries it anymore. And yet Dunifer continued to prescribe it to Malinak right up to the time of his death.
Incredible. What's on tap for tomorrow night?
Tomorrow we look at the drug companies, FDA enforcement, and the fact that dangerous drugs are still allowed to be sold even after people die.
All right, we look forward to that. And as part of Carl's series on prescription drugs, TV8 is offering a free brochure. It's called Prescription for Living, and it is loaded with information you need to know about your doctor and the medicine he or she is prescribing.
Well, our I-Team's recent probe of a local doctor has prompted investigations by more than a half-dozen state and federal agencies that could result in charges ranging from fraud to possibly manslaughter.
In his investigation, A Prescription for Disaster, the I-Team's Carl Monday revealed the pill prescribing habits of a physician who lost 3 patients to accidental overdoses over a 4-month period. Carl, looks like your probe may be just the beginning.
Well, Tim and Robin, just over the past couple of weeks or so, the front lobby of the TV8 studios could have passed for a waiting room of a busy doctor's office. Except these weren't patients waiting to see the doctor. They were state and federal investigators wanting to see the I-Team to discuss our investigation into Dr. Charles Dunifer. We can't show you all their faces. Many of them make a living working undercover. They all work for different agencies, but they visited TV8 to find out more about the same man, Dr. Charles Dunifer. What kind of doctor do you think you are?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a good doctor.
But as we reported, 3 of Dunifer's patients were found dead recently of an accidental drug overdose. The deaths haven't escaped the attention of the state medical board. The fact that there may have been some deaths involved, does that give it a higher priority?
Yes. I think in all fairness I should say that it would give it a higher priority because it's
obviously we're concerned with proper prescribing for patients, and if this is one of those cases where they've died of an overdose by whatever means, it does place a high priority on it.
The Sheriff's Narcotics Division and the county prosecutor also stopped by the TV8 studios to review our story, as did the Drug Enforcement Administration and the Ohio Board of Pharmacies. What possible criminal charges could we be looking at?
Well, there's corrupting another with drugs. There's aggravated there's drug trafficking, illegal processing of drug documents, and there is a possibility, I don't know how, it might be a slight possibility, but there may be even a manslaughter charge may be looked into if we have enough evidence.
While in town, the pharmacy board investigator paid a visit to a pair of pharmacies where many of Dunifer's patients filled their prescriptions. In the months preceding his overdose death, Joe Malinak was getting Placidel, a highly addictive sleeping pill that few pharmacies still carry. When Malinak presented a prescription for Placidel from Dunifer to the pharmacist at Dave's Supermarket, the pharmacist refused to fill it.
I did stop filling him in August because he started taking this Placidel, and I thought it was inappropriate, and I just stopped filling his prescriptions.
You didn't think you should be taking the Placidel?
No.
Do you carry Placidel?
No.
Why not?
I just don't. It's an old drug, it's hardly ever used anymore, and I didn't think it was appropriate.
Generally speaking, it's not appropriate because, what, because it's addictive, or it's
very addictive.
Dr. Dunifer told us he prescribed Placidel to Malinak as part of a program to wean him off prescription drugs. In the end, it was one of the drugs that apparently killed him. The State Bureau of Workers' Compensation has also been investigating Dr. Dunifer. The Bureau has presented its findings to the State Attorney General, who now may bring fraud charges against Dr. Dunifer. And with so many agencies involved now and doing so many investigations, the case against Dr. Dunifer could conceivably take months just to sort out.
Well, I'm sure the families of the people who died are happy to hear this.
They have. Some of them have waited for quite some time, and they'll be the first to testify if that time does come.
All right. Thank you, Carl.
Thanks.
This is News Center 8 at 6.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Here's what's happening. Investigators from 3 governmental agencies have paid a visit to a local doctor first exposed by our I-Team. Dr. Charles Dunifer is now the target of a multi-agency investigation following the I-Team probe Prescription for Disaster.
Carl Monday and the I-Team cameras were nearby as they conducted the search of the doctor's office. Carl is standing by in our newsroom with details on who was involved in the search and just what they were looking for. Carl?
Well, Robin, since our story first aired back in February, about a half a dozen government agencies began investigating the medical practice of Dr. Charles Dunifer. Yesterday, they searched his office looking for medical documents that may substantiate allegations of drug trafficking. The Industrial Healthcare Clinic near East 30th and Superior was closed for business yesterday. The clinic was busy with visitors from the County Sheriff's Narcotics Unit, the Drug Enforcement Agency, and the State Pharmacy Board. Armed with this search warrant, investigators spent 6 hours inside the clinic reviewing the records of Dr. Charles Dunifer. A judge authorized the search based on an affidavit filed with the courts. In the affidavit, investigators say that over a 30-month period, Dunifer prescribed over 4,000 prescriptions to 28 patients. In the affidavit, a medical expert who reviewed Dunifer's prescription habits concluded the pattern of prescribing was, quote, not typical in the practice of medicine, and added there's a high likelihood of physical dependence and addiction. The affidavit says the nature of the drugs given, the combination of drugs, and length of time given is contrary to the physician's desk reference. Our narcotics detective says that based on his training and experience in investigating doctors, Dr. Dunifer is not prescribing controlled substances for legitimate medical purposes, and that his prescribing habits are contrary to Ohio drug law. The detective also notes that 3 of Dunifer's patients died of drug overdoses, and that drugs prescribed by Dunifer were consumed by the dead patients. In the I-Team investigation, Prescription for Disaster, the I-Team reported that 3 of Dunifer's patients, David Haney, William Crawford, and Joseph Malinak, all died of a prescription drug overdose during a 3-month period. What kind of doctor you think you are?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a good doctor. I mean, I try to abate people's pain.
Dunifer, who went to court to try and block the airing of our original story, defended his practice, and in the case of Malinak said he was only trying to wean him off drugs. Malinak's widow said it wasn't so.
And I called this doctor a million times. I would call him from payphones. I would go see him myself. I go, you better knock this off. I go, you're going to end up killing the guy.
On September 10th of '94, one day after Malinak visited Dr. Dunifer for the last time, Debbie found him dead on the bathroom floor. Yesterday, after 6 hours inside, investigators from the DEA, Sheriff's Department, and Pharmacy Board emerged from Dunifer's office with boxloads of medical documents, including the medical records of Haney, Crawford, and Malinak. The documents will be reviewed by the medical expert working with the county prosecutor.
Now, Assistant County Prosecutor James Gutierrez, who's heading up the investigation, would not go on the record for us, would not comment on the case. But sources told us it could be 2 or possibly 3 months before they decide whether to take the case against Dr. Dunifer to the county grand jury. Tim and Robin?
All right, keep us posted, Carl. Thank you. Well, a team of local drug agents shut down a local doctor, a man they say was a major supplier of illegal prescription drugs in a multi-county area. The I-Team's Carl Monday has been investigating doctors in his series Prescription for Disaster.
Last night he went along as Cleveland Police, the DEA, Pharmacy Board, the Lorain County Drug Task Force, and the county prosecutor put one doctor out of business.
Is there a doctor in the house? Not here, at least not during the day. But call at 2 in the morning, and this MD is likely to answer the phone.
Hello, this is Dr. Madeline.
Last night we went along as investigators from several agencies raided Madeline's Broadway Avenue office, an office they say was a midnight magnet for drug users and dealers.
Have you seen anybody selling any pills out here?
No, I haven't seen nothing.
You don't know nothing?
No, I don't.
Agents frisked patients right in the office, but nobody, including the doctor, was arrested.
Those patients convinced me that they were having pain sufficient to require those medicines. I'm not a mind reader.
But investigators say Madeline prescribed enormous amounts of mainly painkillers with little or no examination and little paperwork to back it up.
Well, I've got one to part of last year.
Entire patient histories were documented on tiny prescription blanks.
Did you suspect you were under investigation and decided to put a stop to it?
No, I had no idea I was under investigation.
So you don't think you did anything wrong?
Frankly, no, I don't think I did do anything wrong.
Dr. Madeline admits that many of his patients began to take advantage of him. On the streets, he became known as an easy mark.
Police say Madeline's patients came from as far away as Mansfield.
Is supposed to give some type of examination, and these pills are for treatment, for relieving pain, not just to be issued out like candy.
Candy that could end up in the wrong hands, like students who attend South High School just down the street.
Young kids, these things are finding their way into schools. I think that's a pretty scary thought, too.
Dr. Madeline had a pharmacy full of pills in his office, some dating back to 1975. He won't need them anytime soon. He voluntarily gave up his drug dispensing license. He gave up talking to the I-Team as well.
Get out of here.
We are shooting one more thing and then we're leaving.
Get out of here.
Doctor, you've been so good up to this point. We don't want to antagonize you now.
You want to see how hard I can hit? Now get out of here.
We're leaving, Doctor.
Evidence gathered in the raid will be presented to a county grand jury.
Because I might lose my temper for the first time in God knows how long.
Is there anything else you want to say as we're leaving, Doctor?
Doctor, come on.
Doctor.
They're walking out, Doctor. You have to grab a hold.
It's okay.
Carl Monday, News Center 8 I-Team.
Thank you, Belinda. Well, after 2 years on the run, a man wanted in the shooting of a former Cleveland Brown draft pick has turned himself in to the I-Team's Carl Monday and Cleveland Police.
Alvin McKnight surrendered late this afternoon at a home on the city's east side, and Carl is live in our newsroom now with details. Carl.
Well, Alvin McKnight says he was simply tired of running and that he feared for his life. So this afternoon he gave himself up to the I-Team and police.
Flanked by community activist Freddie Moore and a relative, Alvin McKnight ended 2 years on the lam. McKnight was charged with the 1992 shooting of one-time Browns defensive back Tim Hill during an argument in a Columbus bar. McKnight admitted to me he shot Hill, but it was all in self-defense.
I shot Tim Hill for my life. Tim Hill was going to take my life, and I shot Tim Hill to save my life.
McKnight claims Hill and another man kicked and beat him with a baseball bat, threatening more violence if he showed up to stand trial.
I'm turning myself in because the feds is looking for me, and they said they was going to shoot me on sight because I'm armed and dangerous and all this. I'm running because I'm scared these guys was going to kill me. That's why I ran. And down the feds down here, and they went in, they looking for me, and I just want to get it over with.
Yesterday, police and FBI surrounded this apartment building where they suspected McKnight might be staying.
We'll take a ride downtown, okay?
Late this afternoon, he went quietly, surrendering to Cleveland police, and a ride to the Justice Center. So, where's McKnight been for the past 2 years? He says he was hiding out, trying to stay out of the way. Tim Hill, meanwhile, we're told he's now playing football in the Canadian League. He couldn't be reached for comment. Tim?
All right. Thank you, Carl.
Producing more news than any other TV station in the entire state, so we can spend more time in your community. More time reporting what really matters to you. When you want to know what's happening where you live, turn to Ohio's largest news team, Cleveland's own News Center 8.
Up next on News Center 8, a big celebration at Jane Addams following a major victory for students, parents, and our I-Team reporter Carl Monday, who proved closing the school would be one big mistake.
On this National Missing Children's Day, we'll see how the Amy Mahalovic tragedy has helped advance the cause of protecting and finding children.
If you're a compulsive shopper who's maxed out all your credit cards, we'll tell you about a pill that could change your life.
And Neil Zurcher continues his fascinating week-long one-tank trip to the Mountain State with an underground adventure deep in the bowels of a West Virginia coal mine. Hello, I'm Robin Swoboda.
And I'm Tim Taylor. This is News Center 8 for Thursday, May 25th, 1995.
When you're out and about and unable to watch News Center 8 at 6 here on TV 8, now you can listen to it on the radio. News Center 8 at 6, exclusively on WELW AM 1330. From Cleveland's own News Center 8, Dick Goddard with weather, Casey Coleman on sports, Robin Swoboda, Tim Taylor, and Ohio's largest news team. This is News Center 8 at 6.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Here's what's happening. Jubilation echoing through the classrooms and corridors of a Cleveland school building today after students and teachers learned that their school has been saved from the budget cutters at the Board of Education. The board had threatened to move the business vocational program at Jane Addams to other schools in the district.
But apparently school officials had a change of heart after a Carl Monday I-Team Government Waste Watch report that exposed the proposed move for what it was, a burden to the taxpayers. Well, today Carl was at Jane Addams with the students and staff who worked so hard to keep their school open. Carl?
Well, I'm no accountant, but I do know that $1 million is a lot of money, especially when it's about to be spent by a school system that's flat broke. Fortunately, school officials watched our story and heard the outrage of the staff and students at Jane Addams High School.
I like this part right here. I'm going to change this to
Gwendolyn Linton isn't the kind of principal who would interrupt finals week for just any old announcement.
May I have your attention, please?
But today, even finals week took a back seat to breaking news.
It is with pride and a lot of pleasure that I announce to you today that Jane Addams will continue to be Jane Addams Business Career Center for at least one more year.
How do you feel about it?
Addams students have reason to rejoice. The school may be the crown jewel in the Cleveland system, offering on-hands training in food service management, medical and legal secretary work, and computer repairs. But recently, school officials threatened to farm the training out to other schools and convert Jane Addams to a middle school. The I-Team reported moving the equipment alone would cost taxpayers around $1 million. Addams administrators resisted, and students protested. Some even staged a walkout. Apparently it worked.
Well, it says a lot. It says that regardless of what the situation here is in this district, that an administration and those individuals who are now in charge still have to listen to the public.
And we just feel good to be all together. That's it.
As part of the deal, Jane Addams might absorb middle school students from other buildings to help ease overcrowding there. The arrangement will be reevaluated after a year.
Without you, we could not have gotten the message across.
Principal Gwen Linton was in a gracious mood today. On this, her birthday, not all her presents will come wrapped in paper and bow.
I'm like walking on cloud 9 today. I really am. With my birthday and all, this is the best birthday present I can remember ever receiving in a long time.
Couldn't be better, huh?
Could not be better. Not at all.
Well, students at Jane Addams may have won more than their school back. Gwen Linton, the principal, had planned to retire this year. And with today's announcement, she says that she may put off retirement for another year, and she may come back in '96.
That's fabulous. You know, you have won so many awards, but something like this has to be better than any of those, wouldn't you say?
Well, it is. You know, the stories the stories you remember are the stories that have impact and the stories that get results.
I'm sure you're going to remember this as one of the most rewarding you've ever done.
Well, we'll see what happens. We'll follow the story through, and like we said, they're going to let it experiment for a year and see what happens, and we'll follow the story through for another year and see what happens.
Well,
Good
you've got a school full of people very grateful to you, that's for sure.
All right. Thank you, Carl.